Winston Churchill had a great definition for Russia. He called it a riddle wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. For a change, he was right. Yet another mystery has emerged from Russia, the mystery of a plane crash. And not just any plane. This is the plane that was allegedly carrying Yevgeny Prigozhin. That's right, the chief of Wagner. He's currently presumed dead. Now, before we dive in, let me tell you something. This is anything but a straightforward story. This is a story playing out in the shadows. So keeping that in mind, let's begin. The story begins on Wednesday. A private jet was flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg. 10 people were on board, 3 crew and 7 passengers. One of them was listed as Yevgeny Prigozhin. But was he actually on the flight? We don't know yet. Either way, the plane crashed just north of Moscow. Russia says all 10 people on board are dead. And how did the plane crash? Again, we don't know yet. All we have is this video. Take a look.
Пиздец, это беспилотник. Сбили, бабахнуло 2 раза, взорвалось, падает. Ты посмотри, падает.
The plane was cruising at 28,000 feet. All systems were normal. Then suddenly it began to drop. In half a minute, the plane plummeted 8,000 feet and then it crashed. This was the scene at the crash site. A mangled fuselage, a lot of debris and a ball of fire. Some local residents did see the crash. Listen into their account.
I hear an explosion or a bang. Usually, if an explosion happens on the ground, then you get an echo. But it was just a bang and I looked up and saw white smoke. One wing flew off in one direction and the fuselage went like that. And then it glided down on one wing. It didn't nosedive, it was gliding.
What is the Kremlin saying about this? Well, nothing so far, but Russia's aviation agency has launched an investigation. A team of officials has visited the crash site. It's all very low profile. Even Russia's state media has been measured. They have made just passing references to the crash and Prigozhin. Fishy, I know. This is a man who rebelled against Putin in June this year. He ordered his soldiers to march to the capital. He was abusing generals in public. So why is Russia downplaying his presumed death? Could the Russian state be involved? The chronology is certainly suspicious. First, there was a rebellion, then there was a deal, and now there is a mysterious plane crash. Social media accounts linked to Wagner are blaming Moscow for what has happened. They say the Russian air defenses shot down the plane. If so, how do we confirm it? Ideally, there would be an independent investigation. Unfortunately, this is Russia, so take the probe results with a pinch of salt. The United States is also blaming Putin for the crash. This is what President Joe Biden said.
I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised.
Do you think Putin was responsible?
There's not much that happens in Russia with Putin not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer.
So many questions and very few answers. Like, what was Prigozhin doing in Moscow? He and his fighters had been exiled to Belarus. So why did he return? Also, why would Putin kill him now? And what happens to the remaining Wagner fighters? Only the Kremlin can answer these questions, but right now they're tight-lipped. Prigozhin was last seen in this video. He's seen in full combat gear. He's also holding up a rifle. This video was posted by the Wagner group on Monday. The location is somewhere in Africa. Prigozhin said his troops were fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. He said he was making Africa more free.
Температура плюс 50.
Wagner PMC conducts reconnaissance and search actions, making Russia even greater on all continents and making Africa more free. Justice and happiness for the African people. We are making life a nightmare for ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other bandits.
Well, here's the thing. For most people in Russia, this plane crash is not surprising. Neither is Prigozhin's presumed death. What was surprising was what happened in late June. Putin decided to strike a deal with Wagner. Instead of crushing the rebellion, he chose negotiation, and that is not Putin's style. His rule is not based on accommodating dissent or cutting deals with political rivals. His rule is based on being unchallenged. So in the Putin playbook, Prigozhin had to go. If not in June, then later. But is that what happened? Well, I guess we'll never know. This plane crash will probably end up being another Russian mystery. But politically, what does it mean? It means that Putin is very much in control of the Russian establishment. All this talk of leadership trouble is unfounded. Because remember, this is not just any other critic. This is a man with 25,000 soldiers under his command, a man who was once called Putin's chef, a man who was still useful to Russia in far-off battlefields, and more importantly, a man who was popular in Russia. Just look at these pictures. People in St. Petersburg are lighting candles and offering flowers for Prigozhin. But in Russia, popularity does not help you, neither does a private militia. What helps you is loyalty to Putin. As long as Prigozhin was Putin's chef, he was safe. When the chef became the butcher, his plane crashed. So Prigozhin defied Putin, and now he's said to be dead. But this is not the first such case in Russia. Putin's critics always seem to meet the same fate. They're either in a crash, or they fall out of a window, or they are mysteriously poisoned. So is this all just strange coincidence, or is there more to the picture? Either way, one thing is for sure. If you challenge Putin, you have a target on your back. Our next report tells you about the curious deaths of Putin critics.
The Soviet Union fell in 1991. In Moscow, it was a time of great turmoil. Russian intelligence was at a crossroads. The war that they dedicated their lives to was now over, and they were left to rebuild what was left. Sergei Skripal was one such intelligence officer, and so was Vladimir Putin. The two men had very little in common, but they chose very different paths. Putin went on to become the president of Russia, but Skripal, he joined the West. He spied for them. It was something Putin could never forget, betraying your own country. It's something he talked about a lot too. Skripal was found on a bench in England, foaming from his mouth. He was poisoned. He survived, but all the signs pointed to Vladimir Putin. The West accused Russia of a hit job. However, Kremlin denied the charge. Skripal, however, wasn't the only one. Take Alexei Navalny, for example. He's one of Putin's most vocal critics, Russia's most prominent opposition leader. He challenged the Russian president, and his life took a turn for the worse. Navalny was on a trip to Siberia in 2020. He was on a plane. That's when he suddenly fell ill. He was poisoned with Novichok, a Soviet-made nerve agent. The same thing used to poison Sergei Skripal. Navalny survived the attack, but he remains in jail. While Navalny and Skripal may have survived, some of Putin's critics were not so lucky, like Alexander Litvinenko, a former KGB agent and outspoken critic of Putin. He died in 2006 after drinking green tea laced with polonium-210. It's a rare and potent radioactive isotope. Britain claimed that Putin may have approved the killing, but the Kremlin once again denied any role in it. Then there was Boris Nemtsov. He was a Kremlin critic, also a former deputy prime minister. In 2015, he was shot dead while walking back home. He had slammed Putin's annexation of Crimea, so obviously the Kremlin was blamed. And it doesn't stop there. 2022 wasn't a great year for Russian oligarchs. First, there was the war. And then there were mysterious deaths, like that of Ravil Maganov. He was the chairman of oil company Lukoil. In September, he died after falling from a hospital window. Same for Pavel Antov. He was a Russian politician and millionaire. He too died in December after falling out of a window from a hotel. Circumstances surrounding these falls remain unclear. Now, Kremlin has denied any responsibilities for all of these deaths and poisonings. But it's a curious coincidence that people who cross the Kremlin and Putin often meet an untimely end. Prigozhin was no different. Of course, there's no evidence linking any of these deaths to Putin. But like they say, Putin's critics have an uncanny habit of dropping dead.
It's time for Vantage Chart's images that tell the story, starting with South Africa. Something really fishy happened with Chinese President Xi Jinping and his aide. It is just as funny as it is suspicious. Xi's aide was blocked from entering a venue, almost manhandled. A dramatic rescue operation was launched to evacuate those stuck in a flood-hit region. And Saudi Arabia witnessed a fierce storm. Its iconic clock tower overlooking the Kaaba in Mecca was hit by lightning. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1991, Ukraine officially declared itself an independent country. Ukraine said that it would no longer follow the laws set by the USSR. Eventually, in December, voters approved a referendum formalizing Ukraine's independence. We're leaving you with that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.